There is a class called ChangeNotifier in Flutter. The definition of ChangeNotifier is as follows. A class that can be extended or mixed in that provides a change notification API using void callback for notifications. As a .typedef, void callback is a signature of a function that has no argument and returns no value. A function is the base class of all function types. When you read the definition, the information is a little difficult to understand. To put this in other words, Flutter widgets can listen for ChangeNotifier object, or more precisely, can listen to object instances that extend the ChangeNotifier or mix in with ChangeNotifier. And there is a void function called notifier_listeners in ChangeNotifier. When there is a change in the data in ChangeNotifier, you can call notifier_listeners, and all objects listening to ChangeNotifier will be notified of the change. So, how do you listen to ChangeNotifier? A ChangeNotifier has a method called addListener. You can register a callback function through this method. Then, this callback will be executed every time notifier_listeners is called. There are some things to note when using addListener. Since added listeners are not automatically disposed must be done manually. ChangeNotifier has a function called removeListener, which disposes listeners that are no longer needed. addListener and removeListener will be used again later in this section. The example we are going to cover isn't very different from the Provider Overview 02 app. But let's create a new app and test the ChangeNotifier. In this app, we'll examine what happens when we use only ChangeNotifier without using a provider. Let's start by creating an app called Provider Overview 03 and copying all the contents of Provider Overview 02. First, mix in doc class with ChangeNotifier and make grow call notifier_listeners every time it increases age. And remove the provider that wrapped the material app in the main.dart file. And we will change the title from Provider 02 to Provider 03. Next, we will change My Homepage to a stateful widget. Declare a doc type final variable doc, then create a doc instance with the name as doc03 and breed as breed03 and save it in doc. Override initState and register the callback docListener to be executed whenever doc's notifier listeners are called using the addListener function of the doc instance. The void type docListener function is a function that prints the doc's age whenever notifier listeners is called. When the widget is disposed, remove the docListener using the doc instance's removeListener. Modify the title of web bar to Provider 03 as well. Since we got rid of the provider, we will display the name directly from the doc instance. Since we removed the provider, we need to pass the doc instance back to breed and age. Declare the doc type final variable doc to receive doc that will be passed as an argument to the constructor, and create a constructor using generic constructor. Display the breed property of the doc instance that was passed as an argument of the constructor. Since we have removed the provider, we need to pass the doc instance received to age. Declare the doc type final variable doc to receive doc that will be passed as an argument to the constructor, and create the constructor using generic constructor. Display the age property of the doc instance that was passed as an argument of the constructor. Assign doc.grow to the unpressed callback of elevated button. Let's run it after doing a hard restart. I clicked the button, but the UI didn't update. Let's check the debug console. However, it is difficult to check whether this was printed from ChangeNotifier or from listener. So let's put phrase listener into the docListener function and do a hard restart again. Let's click the grow button a few times and then check the debug console. Not only the age, but also the age listener was printed. To summarize this, we solved half of the puzzle. It is now possible to notify the listener of the changed value whenever the value changes. The rest of the puzzle is to have the changed value be reflected in the UI. And there is also the part where you have to continuously pass the dog instance through the widget. In other words, if there is a widget that requires a change notifier, the problem that you need to continue to pass the dog instance remains. So, provider and change notifier are like half solutions rather than complete solutions. And it's very cumbersome when you need to manually pass the instance to every widget that needs a change notifier, and raise to every listener, and update the UI when it is needed. The thing that does this for you is a ChangeNotifier provider. In the next chapter, we will take a look at the ChangeNotifier provider.